Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into something really interesting today, something you specifically flagged for us as pretty game-changing, potentially.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you sent us Tony Buzan's Mind Map Mastery, and you were really keen for us to kind of unlock the core principles of it and see how this mind mapping thing, can really be put to work in your everyday life. So that's our mission today, to get beyond just, the surface idea of visual note-taking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're really going to dive deep into how Buzan sees mind mapping as a real thinking tool, uh, a method that can actually revolutionize how you process information, how you come up with new ideas, how you can strengthen your memory, and ultimately make both your work life and your personal life richer and more effective.
It's really fascinating to kind of dig into Bizan's own personal journey as well. He was a university student who just found traditional linear note-taking incredibly frustrating.
I can relate to that.
Right, and he found that, the more notes he took, the less he actually seemed to absorb. So that was really what propelled him to start exploring, psychology and how our brains work, memory techniques, the nature of creative thought. He realized that there was a real gap in how we understand how to learn and think effectively.
And what's really interesting is how crucial Buzan's understanding of the brain structure was in his development of mind maps. He saw how a brain cell sends out branches from its central nucleus, very much like the interconnected network of neurons. And this was what inspired him to see the mind map not just as a way to passively record information, but as an active way to really nourish our minds. It mirrors our natural cognitive architecture. Think of it as feeding your intellect in a language it truly understands.
Yeah, and this isn't some kind of, dusty academic theory either, is it? Buzan really emphasizes how mind maps have actually evolved with the times.
Oh, absolutely.
So, while you can still grab a pen and paper, they're also very much thriving in the digital world, popping up in software online resources and even in, some really diverse environments from strategic planning sessions to, creative brainstorming in all sorts of fields. So, okay, let's get to the heart of it. What exactly is a mind map in Buzan's view?
Well, at its core, as Guzan defines it, a mind map is this intricate diagram that reflects the structure of a brain cell, with ideas branching out from a central image you know through association. And the really crucial concept here is whole brain thinking. And to understand this, Buzan draws upon the work of Betty Edwards, whose research on what's called brain lateralization, the idea that our brain's two hemispheres specialize in different functions, was key. And he also references Roger Sperry's Nobel Prize-winning research on split brain theory, which further highlighted these distinct roles of the left and right hemispheres. Buzan's brilliance was in devising a method that intentionally engages both of these sides, leading to a much more holistic and effective way of thinking. It's unlike traditional note-taking, which often favors that very linear sequential processing of the left brain.
So it's about getting both the logical and the creative parts of our mind working together. And Buzan lays out a very clear step-by-step approach to creating a mind map. 7 fundamental steps as he sees it. The first is to always start with a central image, and he insists on using at least 3 colors for that central point.
Absolutely. And then the second step is to use single keywords, and these written in capital letters on each branch. And then following that, each keyword should have its own distinct branch connected directly either to the central image or to another relevant branch.
So branching out from there.
Exactly. And then a key visual element is that these branches should be curved, organic, not just straight lines.
Right, and color isn't just decorative here, is it? Step 5 emphasizes using color extensively throughout the mind map. Ideally, each main branch and its subsequent sub-branches has its own color.
Yeah, and then we come to the part where you really bring it to life, incorporating images, symbols, codes, and even adding a sense of dimension throughout the map, all to make it more visually engaging.
I love that.
Yeah, and finally, the seventh step encourages you to develop your own personal style, your own visual language within this framework. So there's a structure, but there's also a real invitation to make it your own.
Okay, I love that. So there's some guidelines, but also the freedom to make it work for you. Now, beyond these kind of practical steps, Buzan digs into what he calls the essential ingredients that make a mind map so powerful. And the first one is radiant thinking.
Right. Think about how a spiderweb catches information from all directions, right?
Yeah.
Similarly, radiant thinking mirrors how our brains naturally retrieve those related memories and ideas, making recall much more efficient than, searching through a linear set of notes. Buzan uses the example of a pineapple. You think of a pineapple, your brain doesn't just produce a list of letters, does it?
Yeah.
It conjures up an image, and along with that comes a whole network of associations. Its taste, its texture, where you might find it. Radiant thinking, and therefore mind maps, really externalize this natural associative process.
That makes so much sense. Instead of being confined to that one linear path, your thoughts are free to branch out in all directions, just like they do naturally in our minds. The second key ingredient is nonlinear organic flow. And this really contrasts with that linear note taking that Buzan found so restrictive. He felt like it was actually stifling creativity and hindering how well you remember things. The branching structure of a mind map encourages this continuous flow of creative thought, and crucially, it significantly improves information recall because it mirrors how our brains are organized.
And then, of course, we have color. Buzan himself discovered that just by using two colors in his notes, his memory improved dramatically. He actually mentions an increase of over 100%.
Wow.
Yeah, color directly engages the right hemisphere of the brain, and it makes the whole process more enjoyable, and it really stimulates both memory and creativity. And there's a whole body of research that supports the benefit of color in learning and communication.
Mhm.
It helps us move away from that often, monotonous and less engaging world of just black and white text.
Absolutely. And then the power of images is the fourth essential ingredient. I mean, we all know that saying a picture is worth 1,000 words, and Buzan backs this up with cognitive research, citing Haber and Nickerson studies on just how powerful picture memory is. He really emphasizes the importance of keeping those images in your mind, maps crisp, colorful, and clear to make them impactful and memorable.
And finally, we have words, but with a very specific emphasis on using single keywords on each branch. Buzan argues that single words carry a much greater cognitive load. They trigger these unique and diverse sets of associations and really stimulate fresh thinking, unlike fixed phrases, which can often limit that free flow of ideas.
Yeah, it's about capturing the essence of an idea with that single potent word. Now, it's really interesting to learn that this whole approach wasn't just something that Buzan invented out of thin air. There's actually a really rich history behind this way of thinking visually.
Oh, absolutely. Buzan dedicates a whole section to what he calls a short history of the thinking behind mind maps, tracing the roots all the way back to the earliest forms of visual thinking and expression. He starts with cave art, those deliberate markings from tens of thousands of years ago. He sees this as the very beginning, and then the development of writing itself as fundamental ways that humans have tried to make their thoughts visible and shareable.
It's like our earliest attempts to communicate.
Exactly.
And then he moves through Sumerian cuneiform, which evolved from earlier pictograms and then Egyptian hieroglyphs, where pictures weren't just representations of objects, but they were also used as phonograms to represent sounds and abstract concepts. It's just fascinating to look at how humans have consistently sought out these visual ways to communicate and organize information.
Yeah, he also highlights ancient Greece, and how they contributed to refining visual language and systems of knowledge. And then moving into the Middle Ages, he points to tree-like diagrams, like the Arbor Porphyriana, Porphyry's tree, and the Tree of Jesse. These were used as mnemonic aids. They effectively combine words and symbolic imagery to help with memory and understanding.
And of course, you can't talk about visual thinking without mentioning Leonardo da Vinci.
Of course.
Buzan emphasizes how Da Vinci's notebooks were just such a remarkable example of this kind of juxtaposition of sketches and symbols and words, and it really demonstrated that powerful interplay between imagination and analytical thought. It wasn't just the combination of words and images, but maybe also the spatial arrangement, the visual connections that he made that kind of prefigured the benefits that Buzan emphasizes.
Precisely. And he also includes Charles Darwin's Tree of Life sketch, which, visually illustrated his groundbreaking early thoughts on evolutionary relationships. And then moving into the 20th century, he mentions Albert Einstein's reliance on diagrammatic thinking and his famous quote about imagination being more important than knowledge. It suggests a strong link between visual thinking and, profound insight.
And even Richard Feynman, the Nobel Prize-winning physicist, famously used his, very unique Feynman diagrams to visualize the complex interactions of subatomic particles.
It's amazing.
It really places the mind map within this long historical context, showing it not as some sudden invention, but as this natural evolution of these ongoing human attempts to externalize and understand thought visually.
Exactly. Buzan makes it very clear that the mind map is not some isolated modern gimmick. It's a continuation of this really deep-rooted human tradition of visual thinking.
Okay, so now let's kind of shift gears and talk about the practical benefits. Why should you, our listener, actually consider using mind maps? What are the advantages that they offer?
Well, the list of potential benefits is pretty comprehensive. Buzan gives a concise overview that really spans a lot of different cognitive functions. So for just pure thinking, it's about sparking those new ideas and creating a visually rich record of your thoughts. For learning, they're presented as incredibly effective study aids that help you identify and remember key topics and the relationships between them.
He also highlights that mind mapping can significantly improve concentration. So that means more focused engagement with the material and ultimately better results. And in terms of organizing, you can use them to plan everything from your everyday tasks to complex projects and even long-term life goals. And when it comes to planning, they can help you visually prioritize your time managed schedules and see the bigger picture of your commitments. So for you, our listener who mentioned struggling with project management at work, it sounds like mind mapping could be a really powerful tool for visualizing tasks and deadlines.
Definitely. And then for communicating complex information, mind maps can help you distill your message down to those essential points, making it clearer and much more impactful.
And for speaking or giving presentations, you can actually move away from those dense notes and have all your key information at a glance. And this leads to more dynamic and relaxed deliveries.
In a leadership role, they can be excellent business tools for structuring meetings, creating clear agendas, and fostering collaborative thinking. For training purposes, they offer a very accessible and quick format for planning effective programs. And even in that often challenging realm of negotiating a well-structured mind map can help you lay out all your options, understand the potential outcomes, and identify areas of common ground.
Buzan connects these benefits directly back to how our brains are structured. He suggests that mind maps actually mirror those myriad connections, the synapses and neural pathways within our brains. He even touches on the Nobel Prize-winning research on grid cells, which some scientists believe suggests that our brains actually think in this internal map-like format.
Right.
It's as if we're using an external tool that aligns perfectly with our natural cognitive architecture.
It really is a fascinating parallel. Okay, so having established what a mind map is and exploring the compelling reasons why you might want to use one, let's actually get into the practicalities. How do you effectively create a mind map? Buzan dedicates a whole chapter to outlining the key laws that underpin successful mind mapping.
The very first law is about the canvas itself. Always use a blank sheet of paper and orient it in landscape. This makes sense because it gives you more horizontal space to let those ideas spread out. And then as we touched on, that central image is crucial and it should incorporate at least 3 distinct colors.
The next fundamental law is the one keyword per branch rule, which we discussed earlier. And remember, those branches emanating from the central image and those subsequent keywords should always be curved and organic in shape, never rigid straight lines. And again, color plays a significant role with each main branch, ideally having its own unique color.
And it's not just about words and colors, is it? Buzan strongly advocates for the incorporation of images, symbols, and even simple visual codes throughout your mind map, all to enhance memory and understanding. He also emphasizes the use of visual emphasis, like bolding keywords or making certain branches thicker, as well as using arrows and connecting lines to explicitly show relationships between different elements within the map.
Clarity is paramount.
Yeah.
So thoughtful positioning of your branches and keywords is important. And remember that the white space around elements can be just as significant as the elements themselves in creating a really clear visual structure. And while adhering to these core laws, Buzan strongly encourages developing your own personal style. He even suggests setting goals for the number of mind maps you aim to create as a way to practice and achieve mastery. It's like learning any new language, consistent practice is key.
So it really does sound like a skill that you develop over time. Now, the beauty of mind maps seems to lie in their incredible versatility. Buzan provides a wealth of real-world examples illustrating just how widely they can be applied.
Absolutely. Let's start with applications in home life. Buzan illustrates how mind mapping can be so valuable for planning your week, even using the example of an anniversary celebration, to show how you can track bookings and gift ideas and all the necessary arrangements. He also demonstrates how to effectively plan a children's party, maybe a superhero-themed one, covering everything from the venue to the entertainment schedule.
And for those of us who sometimes struggle to find that perfect present, Buzan even outlines a mind map approach to thoughtful gift giving. He prompts you to really consider the recipient's likes and dislikes and needs. And he even touches on planning a romantic mini break, showing how a mind map can help you manage all those little details while keeping the focus on romance.
Yeah. And then moving into the work environment, Buzan gives some really compelling examples of how mind maps can boost productivity and creativity. He illustrates their use in brainstorming research topics, outlining comprehensive reports. He specifically uses the example of an organic juice manufacturer's annual report and for effective project planning. He emphasizes the use of key branches to track tasks and timelines and urgency. He even shares his personal anecdote about dictating a speech to his daughter, who then skillfully mind mapped it for him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It really speaks to their accessibility and how you can quickly grasp the core ideas. And in the realm of education, the benefits seem particularly clear. From using mind maps for effective revision, he uses Shakespeare's Macbeth as an example, showing how you can map the protagonist's tragic transformation from, hero to zero, and link traits to specific acts to strategically planning essays by visually structuring your arguments and your research and conclusions. He emphasizes that mind maps are a valuable tool for learners of all ages, tapping into children's natural curiosity, and even shares Marek Kaspersky's really insightful concept of planting a garden of ideas as a metaphor for studying and growing your knowledge.
When it comes to creativity, Buzan encourages us to think beyond those conventional linear approaches. He talks about making the most of spare time to engage in creative pursuits. He even suggests a creativity workout using random word association as a way to break free from those established patterns and exercise those creative muscles.
Right.
And he really underscores the idea that creativity isn't some innate talent reserved for a select few. It's a skill that can be actively developed.
I like that.
Yeah, and then perhaps surprisingly to some, mind maps also have a role to play in well-being. Buzan discusses using them to achieve a more holistic sense of well-being, encompassing things like nutrition, exercise, stress management, sleep, and overall happiness. He even uses the analogy of a mind map acting as a personal trainer for your mental and physical health.
Oh, interesting.
He provides a practical example of weekly meal planning as a really tangible way to support healthy eating habits.
That's a great example.
Yeah. And then finally, in the critical area of memory, Buzan highlights that inherent power of association. He references Collins and Quillian's research into what's called semantic memory, how our brains organize and retrieve knowledge through these interconnected networks of associations. He gives a really memorable example of using a mind map to aid in memorizing an Edward Lear limerick. And it clearly demonstrates how the visual structure and keyword associations can really help transfer information from short-term to long-term memory through processes like chunking and making meaningful connections.
It's remarkable the sheer breadth of applications that Buzan outlines. But it's equally important to understand what a mind map isn't right. Chapter 3 of the book actually delves into clearing up some common misconceptions and differentiating mind maps from other similar visual tools.
Exactly. Buzan really wants to ensure that there's no confusion about what makes up a genuine mind map. He very carefully distinguishes them from earlier forms of visual organization, like Porphyry's arbor and the Kabbalistic tree of life. He points out that they lack a central image in illustrations, and their structure doesn't emphasize radiant thinking in the same way.
He also differentiates them from even, brilliant thinkers' notes, like Leonardo da Vinci's notes, which, while incorporating sketches and words, lack that systematic and intentional use of color that's such a key principle of Buzan's mind mapping. And Isaac Newton's concept diagrams, while they visually represented ideas, were typically monochromatic and employed an upward tree structure, very unlike the radiating nature of a mind map.
He then moves on to more contemporary visual tools, like concept maps, highlighting their downward hierarchical structure. They use phrases on connecting arrows rather than single keywords, and they're often very limited use of color and imagery. They're often geared more towards rote learning and defining those relationships between concepts, rather than that really free-flowing creative thought. Fishbone diagrams with their linear monochrome focus on identifying causes and effects, and sunburst charts with their compact concentric circles that lack that emphasis on imagery are also clearly differentiated.
So Buzan really stresses that authentic mind maps are defined by their adherence to those specific laws, their ability to promote creative thinking through the use of unique and engaging imagery, and their effectiveness in stimulating memory through the very act of creation and association. It's not just about the visual outcome, but the active cognitive processes that are engaged.
And what happens when you actually start trying to mind map and you find yourself hitting roadblocks or it's just not quite clicking? Chapter 4, titled Solution Finding, directly addresses these potential difficulties and offers practical advice.
Right. He begins by emphasizing that perseverance is absolutely key.
Yeah, if you're feeling stuck, his first recommendation is to go back and revisit those fundamental laws of mind mapping and really double check that you're adhering to them. He also advises you to consciously ask yourself the right kinds of open-ended questions that could help trigger new associations and spark further inspiration.
And he stresses the importance of using a central image that's both simple yet powerful in its ability to represent your core topic and, encourages making ample space on your page for your ideas to naturally unfold and achieve clarity. He even reframes the idea of messiness in a mind map. He suggests that it can actually be a valuable reflection of your dynamic thought processes. And this really contrasts with the often limited structure of overly neat linear notes.
He introduces the helpful technique of using mini mind maps to explore specific subtopics or to approach your central theme from different perspectives. And he also suggests that the very act of creating more mind maps can often help you overcome indecision and clarify your thinking.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And importantly, he encourages persistence, even if you initially get some negative reactions to your mind maps from others. And if you find that drawing is a significant barrier, he does acknowledge the existence and potential benefits of mind mapping software like iMindMap.
Okay.
And finally, he underscores the power of using positive and inspiring words and images in your mind maps, especially when you're using them for problem solving or overcoming challenges.
So it's about having those strategies to troubleshoot and being willing to adapt your approach if you encounter obstacles. Now, Chapter 5 takes us into the realm of what Buzan calls advanced mind mapping. And this explores some really fascinating and more complex applications.
Yes, here Buzan delves into using mind maps as a powerful tool for decision making, highlighting how the subconscious associations that are triggered by colors and imagery can reveal deeper insights. He also discusses their effectiveness in conflict resolution, where creating a joint mind map can help all parties visually understand those different perspectives and work towards that common ground.
Learning a new language is presented as another kind of advanced application. And, the visual and associative nature of mind maps can really help lift words off the page and create those stronger connections. And even the art of writing poetry can be enhanced by using mind maps to explore word associations and imagery and thematic connections.
The principles of design thinking can also be effectively integrated with mind mapping to really visualize those complex processes and potential solutions. And remarkably, Buzan explores how mind maps can even support well-being by providing these visual frameworks for managing conditions like autism, dyslexia, and depression.
Really?
Yeah.
Time management also gets a kind of visual overhaul with the concept of a personal day planner structured as a mind map, maybe using images and a 24-hour clock face. And he also touches on the strategic applications of mind mapping in the workplace for long-term planning and innovation. It really demonstrates the remarkable depth and adaptability of this tool.
And finally, we arrive at Chapter 6, the future of mind mapping. Here, Buzan reflects on its evolution in the digital age and the development of really sophisticated software like iMindMap.
And he draws this really thought-provoking comparison between the established laws of mind mapping and Isaac Asimov's hypothetical laws of robotics. He highlights the current limitations of AI and actually posits that the conscious mastery of mind mapping by AI would represent a really true and significant accomplishment. He even shares Marek Kaspersky's really intriguing concept of 3D mind map software, emphasizing that the potential of mind mapping, even in its current 2D form, is theoretically limitless in its capacity to represent and expand human thought.
It's true.
And Buzan even playfully proposes a prize for the first AI to create autonomously a self-generated mind map that fully adheres to the laws and effectively replicates human application. But at the same time, he reiterates that current AI lacks true consciousness and that uniquely human element that is so integral to mind mapping for now. He even suggests that the very principles of mind mapping could potentially serve as a blueprint or a tool to push the boundaries of AI's future development.
Wow.
So as we bring this deep dive to a close, we've explored how mind mapping as championed by Tony Buzan is much more than a simple note-taking technique. It really stands as this powerful, versatile, and historically grounded tool for enhancing our thinking.
It truly is.
It leverages our brain's natural inclination towards association and imagination and provides significant advantages across various aspects of our lives. Learning, sparking creativity, problem solving, improving organization, and fostering personal growth. And it does this by actively engaging whole brain thinking and mirroring the fundamental structure of our brain cells.
And Buzan's passion for mind mapping clearly stems from his deep belief in its transformative power, its potential to really help each of us unlock our inherent cognitive abilities and achieve our full potential.
So as you reflect on everything we've discussed today, consider this. Looking at the future of mind mapping and the ongoing advancements in AI, how might consciously and deliberately applying these laws of mind mapping not only profoundly enhance your own thinking and learning processes, but also potentially offer valuable insights into the development of more truly intelligent and perhaps even more creatively inspired artificial systems. It's a fascinating thought to carry with you as you explore the myriad ways this magical tool can be applied to enrich the different facets of your own life. Thanks for exploring the depths of mind map mastery with us.
It's been a pleasure.